Ezra walked through the hallways of the house, as if he were moving through a forgotten dream. Every wall seemed to breathe as he passed, as if the mansion were alive, feeding on his deepest memories. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was as if the house was manufacturing memories for him, sensations that couldn't possibly be real. A breeze that carried the scent of his mother's perfume, even though the windows of the house were all closed. A whisper that came from upstairs when he was alone on the ground floor. And above all, that piano. During the day, the piano was just an exotic piece of furniture, absurdly beautiful and out of place. At night, it became the mouth of a secret, and its voice echoed inside Ezra like a melody written to draw truths from the heart. That night, he couldn't sleep. The clock in the room struck 12, and as every day since his arrival, the notes began. This time, he didn't run downstairs. He remained sitting on the edge of the bed, his eyes fixed on the door, as if he were waiting for something, or someone. Then he heard footsteps, but they weren't coming from the hallway. They were coming from inside the room. "Ezra," whispered a voice, so soft it seemed to run down his spine like wet velvet. He turned his face, but there was no one there. Still, he felt the presence, as clear as a hand on his shoulder. And suddenly it was there, not as a shadow, not as a reflection, as a touch. Her fingers brushed his chin, soft, cold, but real. Ezra closed his eyes. "Why me?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why now?" The answer came as a kiss to her temple, a warm whisper in her ear. "Because you listened to me." Finally, he didn't know her name, but she knew everything about him. The next morning, Ezra woke up with the smell of the music still clinging to his skin. Yes, smell. He could now identify scents associated with sounds. The note C held burnt lavender. D was aged jasmine. G, it was her breath. He was going mad. He knew. Or perhaps, finally lucid. The house did not allow logic. While drinking coffee on the porch, he noticed something curious in the back garden. Among the abandoned vines and the moss-covered stone paths, there was an object that seemed out of place. A full-length mirror, leaning crookedly against a dry tree. Ezra approached with slow steps. He didn't remember that mirror, and in the reflection, something that paralyzed him. He was not alone. Behind him, in the glass, a woman in a light dress and wavy hair, her eyes fixed on his, as if she could see through him, as if she had been waiting for him for years. He turned around sharply. Nobody. When she looked back at the mirror, her reflection remained there, but now smiled. Ezra spent the rest of the day locked in his office, going through folders and old family letters. He needed to understand. He needed to put a name to it. It was then that he found a folder marked with a purple ribbon, the same color as the dress of the woman in the reflection. Inside, a single sheet. Concerto for silence and body. Composer unknown. Dedication. For he who dares to listen. It was an incomplete score. Half the notes seemed to have been written in a hurry, and at the bottom was a note in French. Certain melodies opened doors that should never have been closed. Ezra felt his body tingle. That night, he decided to play the score. He sat down in front of the piano, as if accepting a curse. Every note seemed more alive than he was. The sound came as if the very air in the house were vibrating. The wood trembled. The floor sighed. The walls gave off a kind of damp heat. And she came, not as a shadow, nor as a reflection. She came up behind him, embracing him with arms that seemed made of music. He couldn't see her face. He could only feel her hot, uneven, panting breath. Her fingers guided us over the keys, and together they created something that existed nowhere else. Ezra was excited, scared, delivered. She whispered, "Play, until you forget who you are." And he played, until tears flowed without knowing where from. The next morning, Ezra woke up on the music room floor. He was still wearing the shirt from the night before, but it was open and wrinkled, as if someone had partially ripped it off. His fingers were stained with red ink, but there was no pen, no paper, and the piano. Now there were handprints on its top, delicate prints, as if a woman had leaned against it. But no woman had ever entered that house, at least not with meat. Ezra staggered to his feet, his his chest heaving. The sensation of her touch still vibrated through his body, like electricity trapped beneath his skin. He tried to rationalize. Maybe he was daydreaming. Maybe he was having a psychotic episode. Maybe it was exactly where it was supposed to be. He picked up his cell phone and tried to call a trusted psychiatrist in Paris. No signal. The phone vibrated, but no calls were being completed. Emails weren't going through. Messages weren't being delivered. It was as if the house was cut off from the world, or as if the world was on another frequency. Decided to leave. He put on his shoes, grabbed his car keys, and headed for the gate. But the gate was no longer there. The stone wall remained intact, but the gate was gone, as if it never existed. Ezra laughed, a short, bitter, desperate laugh. When he turned around, he saw on the stone floor, right where the gates would be, a purple ribbon. The same ribbon as the folder, the same color as her dress. He picked it up, feeling the still warm fabric, and for the first time, he felt real fear. That night he didn't play, but the piano played on its own. The notes sounded different, higher, more lascivious, almost obscene. Ezra climbed the stairs, but each step felt harder than the last, as if an invisible weight was trying to keep him there. In the hallway, the light flickered, and then he saw his mother's bedroom door ajar, the same door that had been boarded up and nailed shut, as he remembered. Now it stood there, slightly open, and inside silence. But not just any silence. It was a screaming silence. Ezra pushed the door open. Inside the room, everything was as it was 20 years ago. The same veil over the bed, the same oval mirror in the corner, the same desk with unread papers, and the same scent in the air. He approached the mirror, and in the reflection, he saw his mother, but not as he knew her. She was younger, paler, and she was holding someone's hand. From him, not adult Ezra. Ezra as a child, his eyes wide with terror. "What did you see, Mom?" he whispered, his eyes filling with tears. The image disappeared. In the mirror now, there she was, the woman with the purple ribbon. She moved closer through the reflection. She pressed her face against his. Their lips didn't touch, but he could feel the heat. "You're mine now," she whispered, "and I am everything you forgot." Ezra didn't sleep that night. She sat on the floor of the old sewing room, now filled with mold and sealed boxes, with her head in her hands, trying to sort out the thoughts that were racing like leaves in a whirlwind. She no longer knew what was delirium and what was memory. Deep in his chest, there was something throbbing, something old, as if he had been through this all before. She began to rummage through the trunks. She found letters from her mother, notes with no recipient, little pieces of a routine she never had a chance to explain, and finally a photo. Little Ezra, in the arms of a woman who wasn't his mother. Or was she? The image was faded, but the woman's eyes, even blurred, seemed alive. And in the background, the mirror of the music hall, the same. On the back, a single handwritten word, Isadora. He repeated the name under his breath. Something trembled inside him. The air grew thicker. The mirror in the room, which he hadn't even known existed until then, trembled on its own, as if it were breathing. Ezra held the photo tightly. "It's you," he said. "You have a name." And as if in an invocation, the piano played 3 notes downstairs. C, D, G, the same ones he had heard the first night. He walked down slowly, as if he were walking towards his own judgment. In the hall, the piano awaited him like a living creature. And in front of him she, for the first time, outside the mirror, Isadora, white dressed tight to the body, bare feet, eyes that seemed to contain other worlds. Ezra stopped. She smiled. "Now you remember," she said. Her voice was sweet, but with a hoarseness to it, like an echo from the bottom of a well. "I remember? What?" She didn't answer. She just came closer. She touched his face with her fingertips. It was cold, but it made him feel warm. "You were just a boy when you first heard me. It was your mother who locked the piano, who tied me to the mirror, who swore you would never touch me." Ezra took a step back. "What are you?" She leaned in to whisper in his ear. "That thing you feel when a song plays, and you don't know why you cry. That thing that stays on your pillow, when a dream goes away, that thing that lives between a touch and a shiver. Ezra closed his eyes. She kissed him, not on the lips, on the forehead, and in that instant he saw everything. Childhood, his mother hiding him from music, the nights he heard the piano playing by itself, the nightmares that weren't dreams, the reflections that weren't his. Isadora, the woman who lived inside him, or which he never managed to get out of. Ezra spent days without counting time. The mansion seemed to run on another clock, one made of invisible cycles and heartbeats. There was no day bright enough to drive away the fog from his mind. There was no night dark enough to erase the silhouette of Isadora dancing to music that no one could hear but him. She came every night, always at the same time, always without a door. Sometimes it came through the music, other times through the mirror, still other times through memories. And every time Ezra touched her, something inside him disappeared. First, there were memories of the days in Paris. Then, the names of distant friends. Little by little, dates, appointments, the meaning of time itself. "What are you doing to me?" he asked one night, breathless, after playing with her a melody that had never existed in human scores. She looked at him tenderly, but there was sadness there, a deep sadness. "I'm returning you to who you always were," he replied. "Who?" "A haunted man." She came closer, and for an instant, her eyes shone like the piano's. "A man who belongs to music. A man made of notes that his mother tried to silence." Ezra was silent. He knew there was something about her that was not of this world, but it was no ordinary spirit. It was no demon. It was no angel. She was made of something much more human, longing. Isadora was a living memory. The next morning, Ezra didn't recognize himself in the mirror. There was something subtly wrong with her face. Her eyes were darker. Her skin was paler. Her features refined in an almost feminine way. He blinked. The reflection didn't blink back. Then the mirror cracked. It didn't break. It just cracked. In the center, like a heart breaking, and a drop of something thick ran down from it. "Red," Ezra shouted, but his voice did not come out. Just a note. "Do," in an attempt to react. He rummaged through files in the basement. Maps of the mansion. Old files. Diaries his mother kept. He found a note, almost illegible. "Isadora, it's not a name. It's an invocation. She's before the piano. Before the sound. Whoever plays calls. Whoever hears belongs. I need to hide Ezra before he plays again." Ezra was shaking. The mother's words were not metaphors. They were a warning, but he didn't know if he wanted to escape, because part of him enjoyed the loss, because in the absence of everything, only Isadora was left, and she was all he wanted to touch. Ezra stopped using the name. He no longer signed documents. He no longer answered calls. He no longer responded to anyone, and no one called him anymore anyway. The mansion no longer received mail, and even the birds had stopped singing in the garden. The only sound left was that of the piano. Always the piano. He began to sleep beside him, like a faithful dog. The black surface of the instrument was now his pillow, the keys his sheets. At night, Isadora lay with him on the bench, the two of them entwined like lovers in a ritual that only they understood. "I was once from another time," she whispered once, her fingers in his hair. "And you were always mine, in every life, in every note." Ezra wanted to deny it, but I couldn't. In her presence, there was no room for doubt, only for sound. The songs they created together could not be written. They were not made of ordinary notes. They were made of memories, of old fears, of inexplicable sensations. It was a sound that hurt, that loved, that corrupted. And Ezra began to change. In the mirror, I no longer saw his face. I saw hers. Her body was still his. But the eyes were hers. The gestures too. When he ate, he moved the spoon like her. When he walked, his feet touched the ground as if he were dancing, like she did. His voice, little by little, became softer, more drawn out, seductive. On the last call he tried to make, his own mother appeared on the phone screen. The number was non-existent, but the voice answered. "Ezra, she wants you to let go." Don't give her any more than you already have. And then silence. The device turned off by itself. Ezra stared at the screen, trembling, but he felt no fear. I felt a kind of euphoria, as if I were about to go through something definitive. That night, Isadora came naked, not in the form of a shadow, nor a whisper. She came in full body, cold skin, pupilless eyes, long hair like a veil. Ezra didn't hesitate. She sat on him. She touched his chest and said, "Are you ready?" He nodded. She then raised her arms. The piano played on its own, a sequence of notes never before heard by human ears. The house shook, the floor cracked, mirrors shattered, and Ezra smiled as his skin split into invisible cracks, and something inside him, ancient, delicate, feminine, emerged. The next day did not dawn, at least not in the conventional form. The sun didn't come through the windows. The sky remained gray, a thick, viscous gray, like paint that never dried. No sound outside, no birds, no wind. Ezra walked barefoot, wearing a linen robe he didn't remember ever owning. The fabric caressed his skin as if it had a memory, as if he had worn it before. In the large mirror in the hall, something had finally stabilized. There was no more duplication. There was only one figure, Ezra Isadora. From his face, her softness was born. From her eyes, his emptiness came out. They were not two bodies in collision. They were one body in fusion. A new, indistinct being who walked and played and danced with a silence that made one cry. Ezra leaned over the piano. The keys were damp, as if they had been crying. "What's missing?" he asked in a low voice. The voice came from inside him now. No longer from the piano, nor from the mirrors. "You know what's missing." He closed his eyes. Yes, the end was missing. Every melody needs a last note, one that echoes and sets you free. He got up, went to the basement, and opened the door his father had said he would never open. The door to the original foundation of the house. There, deep in the stone and darkness, was a circular chamber, with a second piano, ancient, dilapidated, but still vibrating with a barely audible magnetic field. And behind him a body, or what was left of one. White clothing, long petrified fingers, hair undone by time. Ezra fell to his knees. "It was you. It was always you," he whispered. Isadora. She had been buried there, or sealed. Ezra reached out. He touched the mummy's cold fingers. He felt a pulse, not in her, in itself, and the ground spun. He woke up on the piano bench, the new one, in the main hall. It was night. The clock read 0:03. The music started, but now there were no fingers. The piano played with the house, with the mirrors, with the walls. Ezra, or what was left of him, sat down, took a breath, and played. A note, the last one. The note reverberated throughout the entire house. It wasn't just a sound. It was a cut, as if reality had been split by an invisible thread. And everything inside the mansion, the furniture, the paintings, the steps, had ceased to belong to the physical world. Gravity itself seemed suspended. Ezra felt his body light, but not with the lightness of flight, with the lightness of someone who has stopped feeling heavy. He looked at his hands. They were translucent. The fingertips still pressed the keys, but there was no strength left, no flesh, just form. Isadora was there, not in front of him, inside. "It is done," she said. "What am I now?" Ezra asked or thought, or just felt. Music. Her voice was soft, like a memory box opened in the dark. "You are what I have always been. Now we're just a sound. The last sound before oblivion." Ezra smiled, and he cried, not out of sadness, but because finally, I understood. The house had never been just a house, out instrument, and he, the unfinished melody. Months later, the property was quietly auctioned off. No one from the family showed up. The buyer was an eccentric collector from Vienna, fascinated by musical legends. The mansion was in perfect condition, except for a crack in the floor of the main hall, under the piano. The new owner brought guests, conductors, journalists, but no one managed to get a single note out of the instrument, except for a 7-year-old girl, the daughter of one of the visitors. She approached the piano, and, without knowing how to read music, played C, D, G, and then it stopped. "Mommy," she said, looking in the mirror in the living room. "There's a girl here. She's dancing." The mother smiled nervously. "There's no one there, dear," the girl continued, her eyes fixed on the glass. "Yes, there is. She's smiling, and she's holding the hand of a handsome guy. He's looking at me." The mother approached, pulling her daughter carefully, and then, for the first time in decades, the piano played a single note. "Son," low, slow, intense. The house seemed to breathe, and from the mirror, the girl's reflection disappeared. But nobody noticed, because certain things only exist for those who still hear, and certain stories only end when the last note is played by those who were born to hear it.